up? What up? We back. You know, we gotta stop having these little droughts and whatnot. I see Precious, you over there. Oh, you got you over there cropped and bopped. I see you hair looking dope. I see it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
What you about to go to a party or something? What's going on?
I am. I have a Christmas party at 7 my time. I had a debate that I want to go to my brother's. It was at 4, but he's down in San Antonio, so that's like almost an hour and a half drive. So I don't feel like doing that because I already got to drive tomorrow to my hometown for the holiday. I said, you know what? I'll see him. I'm pretty sure he'll come into town and to give him his gifts or whatever. So
Right.
I'm going to a close colleague's Christmas party that she's putting together. So yes, I'm already halfway done. I ain't put my face on yet, but I got everything halfway done. So other than that, I'm trying to chill for the rest of the year. I got so much PTO, so I'm out for the next 2 weeks. Well, hopefully ain't no shit go down because we ain't in 2025 and work it. That job is it's always something interesting going on, so I got to keep tabs on it. But other
Yep.
than that, it's been a phenomenal good year for me.
Well, you know, seed talk stuff to make your seeds walk. You know how we do it. We said that we're gonna really strive to, be more consistent for the new year and whatnot. And I got some time off too, so we can get down. Um and make sure that you're sharing this, make sure you're commenting, make the algorithms go up. Like I said, for the new year, I think the easiest way to support a black business is just to, support their social media platforms. You can literally just press play and walk away.
Sure.
And that does a lot. You know what I'm saying? We don't want you just to walk away. We want you to comment and we want you to engage us. But, you know, that's all it takes, But let's jump into this real quick. I'm still off this. I'm still off this Diddy stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it should be a constant conversation for us to cover because it deals with real situations in our community. And when we talk about sex trafficking and whatnot, you raised the question, like, do we take sex trafficking seriously in our community? And so while we're waiting for all this to unfold, I'm seeing people's um opinions, if he did it, if he didn't do it, blah blah blah. And that's just a distraction um for what's actually happening in our community. And I mean, you asked the question, do you think the black community takes sex trafficking seriously? And what's your answer to that?
I'm gonna say yes and no for different reasons. And the reason why I think that we have been I'm trying to think of that word people use. We have been normalized of it in our community that they say we become numb to it. Because this has been going on for years, by the way. People think it's a Diddy. They know this sex trafficking in the black community been going on for years. Like they're still missing girls to this day that people believe are being sex. Ooh, child.
Go ahead.
Okay. I thought you got scared. I thought you got disconnected.
No.
But anyway, but there's so many black girls and women who are considered missing in the United States, and they believe to be sex trafficked. I would say I think we know that it's bad and that it shouldn't be happening, but I don't think we ever really do anything about it. Like it's kind of like, yeah, it happens, but hey, what can we do about it? It's kind of like one of those things we're very nonchalant about it. So it's like I don't know how to really say it. It's like when it comes to black girl to black women, I don't think as a community we don't care because we be like that's just the norm that needs to happen, and I don't think we really take it seriously as we should. But then again, we don't take a lot of shit seriously in our community. And like a lot of topics we don't take seriously. That's happened very prevalently in our community. So
Yeah,
I
and,
don't
and
think
to
we
add
do.
on to what you think, I agree with you. And to add on to what you were saying, we don't take it seriously to protect our black, young black women a lot, but we don't protect our young black men in the sense that even if they're the aggressors or they're the ones, quote unquote, profiting from the trafficking industry, even when they're trafficking young women, and not to mention that young boys get trafficked too.
They do.
But there's a victimization that comes from, even if you are a pimp or even if you are the person who's selling someone, there's a level of victimization there too, because you are creating these, like what you said, these social norms and these community norms that make it incredibly unhealthy for people to live with. And so it really taints, Black men too, and anyone who profits from it. Because what happens is too many times the women who are victims of sex trafficking, they're not always looking to remedy the problem. They're trying to figure out how they can benefit from it and cut out the man so they can make a profit. So if you got a woman who is a recruiter, who is a former, victim or a survivor of sex trafficking, now she's a recruiter, she's trying to figure out how to cut out the middleman. No pun intended or pun intended. Like, how can I cut him out and just, profit from it?
Absolutely.
And that's one thing that, Maya Angelou did earlier in her life career. She was a madam. And if you study the history of cities like Smallville, in New Orleans, the madam was one of the most powerful people in those cities, and they were trafficking other women. So I think that the bigger problem with this is that when you got communities that have been cut out of economic development, financial opportunities to prosper, they have to create their own, economic ecosystem. Selling drugs, selling bodies, bootlegging things. The underground market becomes incredibly attractive in these neighborhoods where people have been cut out. And so I think that's no other reason why we don't take it seriously, because it's a huge moneymaker. It stimulates the underground economy in our community. So we don't always have to depend on, the colonizer or the dominant forces to get things done. And we saw this in the Black community during like Prohibition, during like the 15 to 20 years when Black people were legally freed from being enslaved. We saw a lot of Black people bootlegging alcohol. We saw a lot of organized crime creating franchises such as the Negro Leagues to stimulate the economy. And with that came nightclubs, you know what I'm saying? And things of that nature, where sex trafficking, sex workers made their money, but it also funded, certain things like schools, churches, the development of the community, just different construction of different buildings and the infrastructure of the Black community. If you want to do it without white folks, you got to create your own economy, and sometimes that's illegal. Most time it is, unfortunately, if you want to cut them out. Because if you're not following their rules, you're not following their regulations, you're not paying their taxes and their fees, that it establishes the criteria for it to be illegal. But let us not forget, this is the makeup of every ethnic group in America. Whether we're talking about Italians, where we're talking about white Jews, where we're talking about the Irish, they created their communities and their infrastructures from illegal activities, sex trafficking, drug trafficking. There's a place that is very, very popular in the United States that was created from that, and it's called Vegas. That was created by organized crime. That's a known fact. By an ethnic white person who was Italian, Bugsy Siegel. So I think the reason why we don't take it so seriously, we like, if white people do it, why can't we? And it's a way for us to survive, because we already know the U.S. government, that's how they do it. That's a huge fundraising endeavor. Is
It's
selling drugs.
interesting. Let me chime in. It's so interesting you talk, and I'm not trying to change the topic, but since we're talking about sex trafficking, it kind of brings up the subject of prostitution or sex work in such a chain. And I know there has been a lot of pushback when it comes to women who do partake in sex work, or nowadays they call them OnlyFans type of workers. And what you say is true. They probably is not going to say anything because there's money in it. And when there's a demand, there's always going to be a supply of it. And I think me, you both know, and everybody on watching this video know that prostitution is literally one of the oldest professions in the world. It's been around for centuries. But the only thing is that people need to understand that there is a difference between prostitution, sex work versus sex trafficking. And that is consent and someone being forced into those things. That's where the difference comes in at. So personally, I don't have anything against. I used to have something against prostitution and sex work back some years back, but with a little wisdom and change of perspective, I have a different approach about it. I said I think as long as there's safe ways to go about that, I do not see. I don't personally don't oppose it at all. And I think, and I'm starting to realize lately now people have a pushback about it because, as you said, these women who had gotten into that game is finding a way to cut the middleman out so she can keep the money and make her own profit. And I think that's why now I think why a lot of people trying to come at sex workers now, because now the man is now being removed from the equation from the middleman who are taking most of the cut. Now that cut's going to the woman now. But that's a different subject for another time. But sex trafficking, you're right. There's money in it, kind of like with drugs and stuff. There's money in it, despite the fact these are very things that's very damaging to our community. Like we're kind of the most vulnerable when it comes to this type of stuff. Like hell, I would go to fight if something were to happen. I mean, compared to, let's say, they're more likely going to look for a white woman who got caught up in sex trafficking before they ever try to look for a black woman that's been kidnapped and thrown into it. That's what I'm getting at. That's the only downside to it.
Are you saying that you think it's okay if the sex trafficking is done like
No.
Wait. If the sex work is done like with the consent and that they can make money off of it, you know,
if that woman or man is not being forced to do it, this is their own personal choice that they choose to do. That's their right. I'm not here to tell them they should or shouldn't. That's why I say there's a difference between prostitution, sex work versus sex trafficking. I know a lot of people like to think that sex trafficking and sex work are the same thing because at the end of the day, they all using sex to make a profit. But sex trafficking normally are people who are forced against their will. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. That's what sex trafficking is, when people are kidnapped or they're taken out or they prey on the vulnerable and force them into that sort of activity.
Yeah. You think that sex trafficking and sex work share some intersection? Like
perhaps, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some. I think those two probably do muddy the waters a lot. I'm pretty sure it does, just because of the context of the type of work that they do for profit. So yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a muddy of the waters right there. I ain't gonna deny that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like once the government can figure out a way that they can apply some kind of tax to it and regulate it, that sex work at some point um will be legal. I know that in Nevada, Las Vegas, specifically, I know that it's if it fits a certain criteria and adheres to the regulations, that it is legal there. So I can see it being something that's legal all over the country, kind of like in Amsterdam in the red light district.
Yeah, so yeah, I was about to figure out what country it was that legalized it. Yeah, I didn't know which one. I think it was Amsterdam.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anything that you can provide the safeguards, for the most part, since America is incredibly hedonistic and they're into pleasure, they're into putting band-aids over problems. I mean, we would kind of be disingenuous if we said that something like sex trafficking and drug trafficking shouldn't be legal, but then we got all these pharmaceutical companies doing it legally. But
Exactly.
they provide certain safeguards, which is like comes down to dosage, it comes down to having the proper prescriptions and things of that nature. I don't know how they would necessarily do it, you know what I mean, in the sex worker world to, you could only have this many prostitutes in a day. I don't think they would do something like that. I'm just trying to be funny. But they probably would, you know, have some kind of regulations in it. To, but there's always going to be that underworld, that underbelly of anything that's legal. There's going to be an underbelly that's illegal,
Mm-hmm.
to gain power and to gain influence. And what I'm seeing a lot in this sex trafficking stuff is that a lot of the stuff that is done with these human beings is to white male or extort money off of other people. And I purposely didn't say blackmail. But I think there's a huge infrastructure and franchise that says we are going to traffic these young people, minors specifically, to adults, because a lot of these adults unfortunately have this fetish. And then once we supply them with the means to fulfill their fetish, we're going to hold it over their head, you know, saying like, if you don't do what, I've asked you to do, then we are going to show this to the rest of the world and your career is going to be over. But I
Black
also
men.
think there's a lot of money to be made from older people, adults who like to get busy with kids. And I think that they just like, especially people in underdeveloped countries, people in economically poor regions of our global community, specifically in the United States, who don't have access to financial success, they're going to sell their kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to look the other way. They're going to allow their kids to go with someone and take the $1,500 or whatever and say, yeah, we're going to go on a little vacation. Wink, wink. Let me give you a little something, you know what I'm saying, to compensate you for your child going on this, trip with me. And they're, you know, touring Earth landscape, but they're really, pimping out your child. These are true stories. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we just ignore them.
Oh yes. Yeah, it is a global issue, by the way. It is a global issue in many cultures where they will pimp out their children for profit or for some monetary gain. It happens with the Latino community. It happened with the East Asian communities, probably the Indians. I'm not sure, but maybe they probably do the same thing. Yeah, it's definitely a global thing. But it kind of makes you wonder if that is the fact that these things does happen globally. I think that's why black people. It's maybe another reason why black people, why they may care about it. They're not as involved and want to resolve it as much.
Do you think the parents should be charged with a crime um for neglect, for allowing it to happen?
If the child under the age, yes.
Hmm. Because one of the things that comes up quite often, with these allegations against Jay-Z, said a 13-year-old went to this party and she said that she was sexually assaulted by Jay-Z and Diddy allegedly, and that her father picked her up. And some people were like, where are the parents at in this whole thing? How's a 13-year-old getting into a party, you know, not being supervised, not being monitored? Do you think that's a situation where the father should be charged because not only did he allow his 13-year-old to be unsupervised, to be going to these parties, but if he picked her up and didn't report it to police, you think that's a situation where the father should be charged?
To some extent, yes, because regardless, because in a sense, he's kind of somewhat of an accessory because you knew that this was happening and it was not reported. Now the question is, do the prosecutor find it worthy to do it? Like, we can say what we want, but at the end of the day, the prosecutor have to make that call. Should I charge the parent in this situation for what happened to this child for neglect? Because for what is told, he apparently got paid off or whatever it was. I don't know how true that is. They're saying that they learned about it. He didn't report it. They say, hey, we'll just pay you off or whatnot. We don't know how true that is. So
I heard a variation of that story. I heard that he reported, said, I don't recall that ever happening, and I remember something like that. And then the young lady also came out and said, well, I know some of my story isn't accurate, and I apologize for that. So that's where they're kind of trying to dismiss it. But we hear this happening too often in our community where, parents just don't report it.
yes.
What about this angle though? Like, looking at it from this perspective, like, to report something is a whole legal process that is going to take a long time to resolve. It might take years to resolve. Not only that, you don't know if you're going to win or not because you got to prove it. Not only that, your life could be in jeopardy because these people are way more powerful and they have more resources to really cause harm to you. And so, what do you think about a parent says, man, I don't want to go through the legal stuff. I don't want to, go through, me being possibly hurt or even killed. I just want to move on.
In those instances, the parent would have to say that. They have to explain that or why they didn't report that. Like, again, that's like they have to have proof about if the incident happened. Well, they kind of have to have proof. Well, not say have to have proof, but there gotta be some level of fear that they have of the retaliation they've been received if they would go to report it. That's actually believable. Like, I mean, even in a micro world, that's why a lot of people don't want to speak up because they're afraid of the retaliation they're going to receive, whether from the person they're charging or the people that they're cool with that may try to do harm. So again, I understand from that notion of why they wouldn't do that, but the parents will have to say, "This is why I haven't do it." We can't just assume that's why they didn't do it.
I think that happens a lot more than we
It
think.
does. I'm
That
pretty sure it
example right
does.
there, because a lot of people in these communities, in the Black communities that are underdeveloped, economically poor, there is not a system or an institution outside of, the criminal justice system that's dominated by white folks to protect people. It's not like you can just call on your neighborhood Black Panthers or your neighborhood superheroes in the community to be like, oh man, we don't need to go through, law enforcement because we got something like the equivalent of the guardian angels that used to be really popular in the 70s in New York City. They used to go and kind of like, vigilante crime fighters. Very few Black communities have something like that that's set up. Now, the Crips, the Bloods, and the BGDs, they are a form of protection for people who make the decision to be a member of that group, but they do their own little separate kinds of harm to their victims and to opposing forces in the community. But that's the closest thing we have. And, we know that Crips, Bloods, and BGDs are a result of Black organizations being dismantled by COINTELPRO, headed by J. Edgar Hoover. So that was intentionally done to break down Black organizations in our communities. So now, it's disbanded, and now they just create these criminal, franchises that obtain revenue through illegal means, like selling drugs, trafficking, selling stolen items, things of that nature. So we don't really have any institutions in our community to protect us. So we have to depend on law enforcement or depend on some kind of settlement made by the person who has victimized us. Some people may be like, man, I'm not going to go to court. If I can just settle this out of court and outside the system, and if R. Kelly did such and such to my daughter, I'll just go ahead and take some kind of, you know what I'm saying, financial kickback, and then just, you know, chop it up and see if we can use our trauma as, you know, a treasure, you know?
But here's the question I have though, and I'm not trying to be that person. I'm just being a realist. Let's just say we did have those institutions in our community. What are the odds that they actually will resolve it when the abuser is a man, a black man at that?
What you mean by that? Break that down a
Because
little bit
I
more.
think our community have a bias when it comes to when black male are abusers or seen as those who are committing a crime. We tend to be very biased about it, or we tend to sweep it underneath the rug a lot. So yeah, I know we talk about police in our own communities and stuff like that, but what are the odds of them of actually going through and actually handling a situation like that where a black man or black man, let's say if a black male is actually going to prosecute them or whatever way they do it? Like what will be their core of action? What will be
Yeah.
their action or plan? How they going to get rid of that person out the community? Because that type of person can stay because they're always going to find a way to still do what they want to do. They may be slicker about it, but how they actually going to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to really hear what people out there got to say about this. So please make sure that you're sharing and we're commenting. We just want to plant this seed, and I want to follow up on a part two. And I want to close this out. Right now, I think we've asked some really good questions. I think that we planted some really good seeds to go from that. But I want to, you know, I want to know what, you know, people think out there, you know what I'm saying, of what y'all think about, um, do we take sex trafficking seriously? Do you think parents should be charged for allowing sex trafficking to happen in their families and in their community? Um, what do you think? So yeah, make sure y'all are donating, you know what I'm saying, to us and whatnot. You know what I'm saying, you know, time is money, money is time. So we put our energy out there. If you can, you know, allow this to keep going by, you know, donating and whatnot. I also want to let y'all know that February 22nd, if you're in Seattle, February 22nd at 7:30, doors open. We're having Tribal Productions versus the Griot Party Experience. Two of the most accomplished art collectives in Seattle are going head to head, rapping, spoken word, DJ battles. So stay tuned on that. But what do you think is the plan of action? What do you think is the homework for people when we step away from this topic? What should we be doing to really address this issue of sex trafficking in our community?
I think usually this type of stuff kind of starts pretty young. So I think parents and even adults in the community, we need to start monitoring our children, our girls and our boys, figure out, learn what they're getting into, learn who are they talking to on social media, because social media is a big thing and it's often used as a tool to lure children away from their home to be captured, to be submitted into those sort of activities. So I think parents definitely need to be monitoring their children, what they get into. I think us as a community need to be realistic about these things and really come to terms, where do you really stand when it comes to these type of topics or when it comes to these type of issues. I think I'm starting to realize a lot our community as a whole is becoming very disingenuous when it comes to these type of situations, especially when it comes to our favorite people, including celebrity. Keep in mind, we are humans at the end of the day, and they're always, and unfortunately, sometimes our terrible urge to get the best of us if you don't have good self control. And while what you want to believe or don't believe, that's ultimately up to you. What you want to believe or believe, just keep in mind, whatever you choose to believe, it does and can reflect in your real life.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think the plan of action, to add on to what you're saying, should be like create those spaces where we can be educated on how it works, how that system works, how the system starts, how the seeds are planted, and how it grows into something that's very toxic and unhealthy for our community. Um, and that also includes providing those opportunities for us to make money other kind of ways, whether it's, creating flea markets, whether it's creating co-ops in our community, but we got to have other ways to create income and revenue as legal as possible so we won't draw the attention of law enforcement. And we have to create those opportunities for ourselves so we won't have to like stray. Because one thing about our community when it comes to economics and financial success, and it makes sense, I understand it, but I don't always agree with it. But why wait to go to school for a certain amount of years, you know what I'm saying, when you can make money right away? And we're constantly hearing from the dominant power structure that when it comes to Black folks making money, we should always endure the longest wait. Be patient, whether we're talking about reparations, whether we're talking about completing that 4 years of college so you can finally make it to the pros and make $1 million. When, you know what I'm saying, you can just make that money, you know what I'm saying, when you're 16, 17, 18 and go pro, like and forego an education. I thought the reason why you got an education at the university or college level is so that you could, qualify, to make more money once you get that piece of paper, that degree, that master's or whatever. But we're always encouraging Black people, for the obvious reason, to always forfeit and postpone, that gratification. So it makes sense the reason why we want to be instantly gratified for something. And that's so attractive. Number one, because we don't know if we're going to live long enough to actually make that money. That's a reality that, we can talk about more in depthly next time. It's like in some of these, economically poor communities that lack resources like healthcare, like, a quality food supply, they're not living past 40 years old, 30 years old. So why would I wait for this, kind of postpone gratification? I'm gonna get it now. If I can make $100,000 as an 18-year-old doing illegal stuff, I'm gonna do it because I don't know if I'm gonna make it to 21. So we have to create these lanes and these avenues and these channels within our community, so it makes more sense and it's actually healthy for us to postpone our gratification and just really concentrate on educating ourselves on how to be good people and be kind and protect the most vulnerable in our community. I think that should be our plan of action. But anyways, man, make sure y'all are commenting. We're gonna try to get in here at least once a week. We're gonna get it out a lot more. Thank you, Precious. Looking great. You might not even have to do your face. Just step out like that. You know what I mean? But enjoy your holidays, everybody. I know some of y'all, the holidays is not a good time. We're gonna have an episode on that too. People be like, happy holidays. Sometimes the holidays is not happy for people. So
I also want to bring up for another topic. I know I'm not sure you may or may not see that, people may not see that as a Black community issue, but I think we need to talk about the killing of that CEO, the United. I think we need to touch on that. I know a lot of people. What they got to do with Black people? I'm not saying it has to do anything with us. I'm gonna talk about how that incident is. I'm looking at it as a catalyst of what's about to come. And but despite the fact you may not see it as a Black issue, anything that happens with insurance and stuff like that, it's going to impact us heavily. Okay, so I think we definitely need to talk about that and what's this and why everybody is rooting for this Luigi motherfucker who took him out.
Okay, we'll talk about that next time. It's
We
been
need to talk
Seeds
about it.
Walk, stuff to make your seeds walk. We out.